everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Scott Stokely podcast. And I am sitting on the fairway of what may be the best disc golf course in the world. Now, I said maybe because there's a number of courses that are the best disc golf course in the world. It's subjective. I've had many courses that I thought were the best course in the world, but this may be the best course in the world. And I'm here with Paul Stiller. He's the designer of Caliber Disc Golf Course in North Idaho. Now, before we start, the story about how this course went on the ground and everything about it is fascinating. But I want to tell a quick story of how I wound up here. So I'm down at the Farragut, thank you, the Farragut Disc Golf Complex at a tournament this past weekend. 5 disc golf courses from one parking lot. Unbelievable disc golf destination, fantastic courses. And when I was at the tournament, someone came up to me and said, "Oh, there's a private course an hour north of here. It's awesome. You got to play. It's Caliber." And I said, thank you so much for the information. And then I just moved on. I mean, I get that every time I go somewhere, someone says you got to play so-and-so course. Typically during the week, I'm not playing. I'm doing other things, letting my body recover. But then a second person came up to me and said, you got to go play Caliber. And a third person and a fourth person. And I'm not exaggerating. I would say 30 people probably came up to me over the course of the weekend, said, have you played Caliber? And so finally I was like, all right, I'm convinced. I'm going to go check it out. And I came up here and I played the course a couple days ago, and it is possibly the best course in the world. One more quick story, and then we'll let you do the talking.
Sure.
This is why this is possibly the best course in the world. It's just a little anecdote from my visits here. So in addition to this course, Paul is building a second disc golf course on the same piece of property. That's another part of the story, which we'll get to. And we go up to the very first hole of the course, and there's this elevated tee pad that's about 3 feet off the ground. And when I stepped onto the tee pad, I said, well, this is great, but when you build a dirt elevated tee pad, how do you keep erosion from just knocking it down and making it a project? He says, well, because it's made of rock and it's a certain type of rock, and we put it in the ground and we build it up. And this type of rock, once it settles, is what we need, what you need to make it so it doesn't erode. And I said, okay, that's cool. And I looked at it, I said, well, do you think it was worth it? Because this is a lot of work to build something 3 feet higher than the ground below it. He says, well, step down here. So I stepped next to the tee pad 3 feet down. The hole goes over a little hill, and I said, you're right. It is a better hole, that 3 feet. And I said, so between you and me, what does something like this cost? And he says, oh, about $1,500. I said, my thought was, you spent $1,500 to make the whole one tee pad, well, 2 tee pads because the pro tee, better. That's a pretty big investment for 3 feet of elevation, but it did make a difference. And then I said, but what about the erosion thing? He says, well, you buy a certain type of rock and then you have to water it all the time, and then it has to settle over the next 12 months. So we can't use this for 12 months. So you spent $1,500
for 2 pads.
For 2 pads that it's going to take a year before they're usable.
Yeah, probably next May I could get them compacted enough to feel comfortable building something quality on it.
Okay, so that level of detail and effort and money is on all 18 holes of this course. So I'm so blown away by what's gone into this course. I had to talk to you. But then we started talking about the history of the course. I said, your podcast number 2. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'll let you do some talking now. So before we start, let's just quick background on you. How did you get into disc golf? I mean, how did this backstory?
I started playing golf when I was 5 years old, ball golf. Sorry, Dad. And you learn a lot about life through playing golf. So in playing ball golf, you're exposed to par 4s and par 5s and par 3s. And you fall in love with the game, and you also fall in love with different holes, and some of them are just, they'll take you down every time. And that's the beauty of golf, is you're not going to go out and be perfect every time. And if it was that easy, then it wouldn't be that fun. So it's golf that got me into disc golf. And I started throwing in 1986. First disc was an XD. That's about all there was back then. And You know, it's the love of golf. It doesn't matter whether you're hitting a ball or throwing a disc. It's the same game. It's the same philosophical drive. It's a game that's a lot of, it's a lot like life.
Okay. So you got into disc golf,
Mm-hmm.
and you told me the story. You went up to Alaska. You worked
Yep.
in forestry.
Yeah, I built a lot of skills over the years, not knowing I'd be building a disc golf course for myself, but I went up to Alaska and did all sorts of jobs I would rather not talk about. But one of them was learning how to swing a chainsaw and doing tree thinning and just general landscape on a large scale like that, helping folks out with their view, helping folks out see something in their forest that they might not have seen, because I'm used to walking around forests and kind of feeling my way around and having a good spatial recognition and say, well, we're about this far from that, and that's over here, and it'd be cool if we left these trees and you had this view, because if you take down all the trees, the view becomes smaller. But if you can only see a little bit of the mountain, it looks like a bigger mountain. But if I took all those trees down over there, it would look smaller. So having that spatial landscape, I would go out and help people who had bought land and say, yeah, let's make this better, man. You could have these awesome views. So that's what got me interested in doing that. And then I've owned several pieces of land, and I've always gone in and made them better over time, like a lot of homeowners want to take advantage of views or build something else with their land or put in a shop. So I became savvy with moving around dirt and fallen trees and just having good spatial recognition.
Okay. So that's your background in land management and the artistic side.
Yep.
And you threw discs around.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you were in Corvallis, Oregon, and a few other places.
Yeah.
And your wife is a botanist, and so you had this
nurse practitioner, botanist, functional medicine doctor.
Yep. And you have family, and so you wind up in North Idaho.
Yes.
Did you come here to build a disc golf course, or did you come here?
Nope, I came here with a whole stack of goats. And we used to milk and make cheese and do all that stuff and use my tractor, and I've got fencing skills and all that stuff. It was more my wife's hobby, and then the more I took it over and the more she was working, it kind of became my hobby, which wasn't really my hobby. So I wanted to get into something else. Never thought it would be, disc golf. I built a course called Nubian Palace that's on the south side of Colburn Road. It was a fun little course, had a beautiful stand of trees, and I just wanted to kind of showcase those trees and make them the best they could be and make the forest the best it could be. So I went in and did my handiwork and used to throw there a whole bunch. And then we had the opportunity, it was in the farmland, like a lot of people live out in the open, and then there's more forested areas like this. So we started scouting around. It took us several months to find a piece of land, and we weren't necessarily looking for 40 acres. We were looking in between 10 and 15, and I knew I was going to put a little backyard course wherever I was going to be. I see it as a way to manage your land, because you're able to get around it and keep an eye on things, and you can thin things out. But really, it was, we were just looking for 10 or 15 acres.
So you weren't setting out to build an epic world-class course. You just were looking for something for you.
Something to set up camp on, more in the woods, but
That's
still
amazing.
access to town and stuff like that. So I kept seeing this. I was looking at other pieces, but I kept seeing this piece at the end of this road, and it was advertised 40 acres. And I would come down, and I couldn't find it. It wasn't advertised properly. And I was like, man, something just kept calling me to come down here. And finally, I just called the realtor, and he said, yeah, I'll show you the land. It's not, he kind of apologized because it said flat. I really didn't want something flat. And I knew it wasn't flat down here. So we met out here, and he took me for a walk. And I knew after about 15 minutes, after about 10 minutes, I was like, wow, this got all the rolls and hills, and, it's a beautiful stand of trees, got a variety of things going on. It hadn't been terribly mismanaged over time. But when you're out there looking for land, all the pieces of land out west, pretty much anywhere in the country, they've been logged for 100, 120 years. So you might look at 40 acres and the next door 40 acres is completely different because it's been managed differently. So when I came here, I saw that this land had been logged several times, but they also had replanted with several different species of trees. There was a good natural understory, which means it hadn't been really pounded on and logged. So I saw the advantages of it. I knew it was going to be a tough cleanup, but as soon as I saw the land, I was like, wow, I could actually do this. I really don't need 40 acres, but this would be a big job. So kind of put a light bulb off in my head and then chatted with my wife about it.
Okay, so I am curious what you saw in this, because when I first came out here, the first thought, it's a natural thought because I'm looking at a finished product,
Yep.
is I can't believe you found a piece of land that just has all these natural fairways running through it. I mean, as a matter, coincidentally, 18 of them. And then I come to find out that you cut down 4,000 trees.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So if you cut down 4,000 trees, there was not a disc golf course here. There was a rolling piece of forest. Like, what about this made you see a course?
The one thing about this piece of property is it wasn't a farmable piece of property. So it had never been farmed. So it had never gotten sprayed with Roundup or 2,4-D. And since we wanted to put a well on it, you know, it was unpoisoned. So that was like, yeah, that's good. And then it hadn't been totally logger fested, where the loggers come in and take all the good trees and stuff everything there. But what I saw on this piece of property was it had just the right rolls, and it had these nice little benches and these swales, and there was these beautiful stands of trees in between some carnage. There's a lot of birch trees on this property, and a lot of them are dying from the gypsy moth and other natural causes. Birch is a pretty fast life cycle. And there was a lot of death and decay here. So for much of the course, I just followed what was here. Some areas I just had to penetrate and say, I'm going through that to get to this next gap that was going to build this hole. This hole was classic because this part was pretty good to about where we are. And then over to there to the roll of the hill was really thick. And then it was beautiful, and I only took out about 20 trees down below there. But some of the areas, you know, when I say 4,000 trees, some of them are only this big, you know, some of them are fairly good size. A lot of them were dead and dying, so I just tried to follow the natural gaps that were there, not force it. Some of the benches were nice because they come up and roll over, and you just kind of sit back and see the big picture and start putting flagging up and start hiking it 100 times before you start swinging a saw.
Okay. So now that is, I mean, that's a great part of the story, but here's where it's about to get interesting. Because in North Idaho, one of the great things out here is that when you buy a piece of land, nobody around you cares what you do on your land, right?
For the most part, sometimes.
if that were the case, it's not that interesting of a story.
Right.
So here's where it gets interesting. The process to go from I want to do this to this course.
It definitely took some juggling.
A lot. So start from the beginning, because
Took a lot of juggling. So my first experience that I might get some pushback and I had a challenge in front of me was I was actually working on this hole. I was down towards the green, and a guy came by who was walking with his dog, and he was on private property. I wasn't going to harass him. I was swinging a saw, you know, and he was just walking along. I knew he lived in the homeowners association to the south of us. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, building a disc golf course." But I was down on this little road there, and he was like, "It's kind of tight place to throw a frisbee." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you know, I didn't need to explain to him anything else. I was just actually clearing that road down there to drive my car by, but he hadn't recognized this hole." And I took it as a little rude because he didn't stop. We didn't really meet. He just kept walking on his way through my property with his dog. I didn't say, "Hey, you were trespassing. Please turn around and go the other way." I knew where he was going, and he had lived here before me, and you know, they kind of traipsed around the property a little bit. It didn't really bother me. And but I could tell he wasn't too fond of that idea. So the more I worked on it, you have to think about, well, this area is zoned agricultural forestry. So if you stay within those limitations there, you can do a business that has to do with that. Well, I was doing something more in recreation. So I knew I needed to apply for a conditional use permit. And you have to meet a certain, jump through the hoops and do a certain set of guidelines in the conditional use permit and prove this, that, and the other to be allowed to do your thing. Don't mess with the watershed, displacement of soils, this, that, and the other. So the neighbors eventually, started asking me more when I would see them over there what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm building a disc golf course. And they said, well, is this going to be a big thing or a small thing? And I was like, well, it's going to be a disc golf course for me and my friends for now, is all I said.
For now.
And, I really didn't know that I was going to make it go public and make it, because I didn't know if I could. I mean, I knew I could do it, but I hadn't put it all together yet and done it. So I didn't know if I was going to die doing it or not. So I just figured just keep going for it and don't really bank on it, just work towards it. And, I talk to my buddy Kendall once in a while. I say, I don't care, what it takes or if this thing's ever legalized. I just want to build a disc golf course for us and our buddies to play that's fair, challenging, and fun. And I'm going to do it the same way as what you see here today, even if no one ever really comes and plays it. This is my backyard, and this is what I want it to look like. I kind of look at disc golf as forest management. Once you start building a course, you're really into a forest managing position, because you're responsible for what this forest looks like years later. So you better choose the right trees, the right understory, the right pathways, so you're not, you might have your heart set on a hole, but if you have to whack down the healthy trees to do it, it doesn't make sense, because the other trees might die around you and it might look, might not have done the best thing for the area.
Well, that's one of the most striking things. So,
but I digressed a little bit.
No, it's okay. When we were walking the course, when you're designing, it was so interesting, because you would go back and forth between, and next week this is going to look this way, and then the very next sentence was, in 10 years these trees have to go, and this tree is going to die in 5 years.
Yeah, you see the natural progression.
Yeah, so like when you say
cycle.
Forestry management, I mean, I was blown away the amount of thought that every single hole. Yep. It wasn't just about the design of the hole. I mean, as a player, that's all I'm really interested in.
Sure,
but from your perspective, it's not sustainable.
It was the health of the whole, and more going through an area saying, well, these are beautiful trees here, and these are the healthy ones, and I'm going to showcase these for the future by doing this. And then that lets that tree grow to the fullest capability, and that be healthy.
And this was part of the forestry management, but the course design process. You were saying, I need these trees to stay on the hole, because this is vital to the hole. Therefore, these trees that are dying anyways are also sucking nutrients and sunlight away. We need to pull these out in order for these trees to be here for the whole in 10 years. I mean, the vision to think 10 years ahead is...
Yeah, well, in most land uses,
so
there's a carrying capacity between what the soil will provide and what gets sucked out of it, and how long, things are going to last. You can overplant and do a forestry operation where you've overplanted, and now all the nutrients is going to get sucked out of the soil. Someday you come by and whack all the trees, and you might have a hard time growing other things there again for a while, or things that would have grown before, because all the nutrients got pulled out of the soil.
Right. Cool.
So to go back to the neighbors and the pushback.
Right.
The more they started asking about what I was doing, I just said, hey, I'm building a disc golf course, and I want to have this be a real disc golf course, and it'll be a pay to play, so it won't be a free for all out here. They got a little scared, and that's all right, because I don't think they really knew what disc golf was. I think that if someone's a golfer and they think disc golf, they might go, that's not so great. Someone who isn't familiar with either sport might not know. So I didn't assume that they were disc golfers and they didn't want one in their backyard. I just assumed that they didn't know what it was. So naturally there's going to be a pushback. So it's actually my job to slowly educate them over time without being angry at them for not knowing, or don't be upset because they don't want something in their backyard. We need to take the high road and let our actions speak in the long term,
Right.
whether this is something that they frown upon or not.
So what was the process? I mean, when you first had to apply for,
We first applied for a conditional use permit, and once the permit went in, then the county gets a hold of all the people surrounding the plot of land that they're applying to change the building codes for in this county. And the one area that was a bone of contention was the homeowners association to the south of us. So once they got the letter that I officially wanted to start a disc golf course, that's when I got a phone call from one of the neighbors, and they said, "Oh, come on over. We wanted to, chat about the disc golf course and say hello." And so Jill and I walked over there with a couple kids, kind of unsuspecting, and it was a little. It wasn't quite being lynched over at their house on the deck, but it was definitely a piece of paper writing down everything to be used against us. And a very, we don't want this, we don't like this, all of this type of attitude, and they didn't even know really what it was, nor did they understand where I was building it and how the hole shape actually protected their home. And like hole number 5, you're actually throwing away from their hole. 6, I've given them 150 feet over to their house, and their house is only like 12 feet from the property line. So I gave really good setbacks over there to be respectful, just like you'd see on a nice private golf course.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, from a player's perspective, even errant throws from amateurs aren't.
Right.
They're not going to people's yards.
So I tested that out. I had guinea pigs come out. I'm like, come on, let's go play. Let's see how these holes throw, because I wanted to see where things were going so I could adjust. And I had thrown it plenty to pretty much know, but I wanted some true hacks to come out and really ditch some off to the side and see if we can get to the neighbors. And some of them would get close, but still you think you're close because you're 50 feet away and you're still 35 feet from the property line, which a disc can go 35 feet easily, but that was going out and hitting a tree and really shanking off to the right 80 feet. So I gave them really good setbacks and tried to be respectful, as if you were on a nice golf course and you would hope that the designer of that golf course would give the people over to the side. So
now the commissioners, I was teasing earlier about when I was kind of being sarcastic, saying no one have a problem with what you're doing. Neighbors, people are human, and they are trying to protect their property and property value and privacy and noise pollution and people driving too fast and all the things that can come with more people coming up here than they would like. But when it came down to it, the culture, especially of this area, was really defending individual property rights.
Yes, we've got good commissioners in this county, and they stick up for your property rights. And in their view, and our legalese here says that if you're not taking of anybody's land or endangering them, then they should be able to do what they want. So, you could look at that objectively and subjectively and say, well, once in a million throws, there might be a boss that's going to fly over here and scalp my kid. That's not possible because we've kind of defended against that with the design. So we weren't endangering them, and we weren't taking any of their land, and we gave them plenty of setback. So one of the things that the commissioners made a point of is how close all those homes were built to the property line. Now, out in the country, so to speak, sometimes when people buy 5 or 10 acres or 40 acres, they might build up close against a property line thinking that might never get developed, which might be the case. If you build up against like BLM or other state or national park land, or just Forest Service land, chances are that'll never happen. This land was bound to be bought at some point in time and developed, and they just hoped that no one really came and did that. So what I tried to assure some of these people from the very get-go was that you're not going to be looking at a bunch of McMansions back here. This isn't going to be a subdivision hanging over your subdivision.
Right.
And someday you might look at this, if this area grows a lot, as, hey, we've got this beautiful green space behind us. So try to, have them see the positives. they thought that, oh, our property values will go down, when actually, if you've got a quality recreational site in your area, your property value is going to go up. So it was a bit of a struggle. I think in the long run, it's worked out though. We've had several of them come to us and say, hey, it didn't work out how we thought it was going to work out, and you guys are more respectful than we thought. And that was something that definitely had to be worked on. There was a lot of people out there, once they played the course several times and find out, well, this isn't a guaranteed thing. There's going to be some pushback here. This might not go through. People get pissed off, and they get emotional over it. They're like, well, how dare, and people can get all upset, and start, F them or whatever. And it's like, well, okay, you guys, let me chat with you here. These people think that we're going to be disrespectful. They think, that there's they have these fears, right? Let's not feed their fears with what exactly they expect to happen, right? Let's not give them the fuel to dislike us. We're going to have to change this with our behavior. And plus the general, disc golf, we're trying to step it up, and be more respectful. And it gave us an opportunity to prove through our behavior to them that we are respectful. And what I tell my guys on hole 1 is I'd have guys come out and test out the course, see how it's playing. I'd be like, okay, guys, these guys down on the south side, let's be nice to them. If they're out there in their yard or something, and your disc is even remotely by, just be polite, just as if they were your parents or your parents' friends or someone you respected lived there, or as if you lived there. Treat those people as if you were there, and how would you want to be treated? So they've noticed that, and I think that's a big plus for the people who play this course, and it gives them the confidence that, probably a big sigh of relief. Some of them were probably honestly like, oh, that didn't turn into a big, big shit show.
Right.
But, it was time for us to prove through our behavior that it's a reputable thing to do.
Yeah, I was really struck by that because, I've talked to you at length now several times about this, and at no point have you said anything that could be paraphrased as, I paid for this property, it's mine, I do what I want.
Right.
It has always been about coexisting.
Yeah,
right?
I've tried to more meld into the situation than force the situation. If you try to force a social situation, most of the time it'll backfire on you, especially with neighbors. I think it takes time, and there's a lot of tensions in the world right now, and I think even if you have neighbors that you might not get along with philosophically, they're still your neighbor. They're not your family, but they're your neighbor. And you should give them respect, as neighbors need to have respect, even if you don't get along or see things eye to eye. So that's always been part of my philosophy is, okay, we can coexist here. We don't have to maybe believe the same thing, but it doesn't mean that I won't come help you. I will go help all of them, even in the fit of them, wanting to shut me down or wanting me not to do this. I would have gone and helped them if their house was, flooded or a fire or whatever, because they're my neighbor. And I think that over time they just earn more respect for us, and so we respect them, they respect us, as disc golf should be respected.
Well, yeah, the people that, because we spoke at much more length than this, and the people that were the most in opposition to you, I haven't heard you say a single word about them other than, oh, she's a nice lady, she's just worried about her property value, or he's a nice guy, he just doesn't know what disc golf is. Like you haven't said a negative thing about anybody once. Yeah. Even the commissioners, you said that you got a vote of 3-2. Right. And I said, so 2 people voted against you and you didn't have a bad word to say about them.
They just didn't understand what disc golf is. It's hard to assume that everybody knows what disc golf is or what the impacts of a disc golf course would have on your community or small area you live in. There's a lot of examples out there where disc golf can get thrown under the bus. You could go by several city parks at a certain time of day and see folks loitering and tossing beer bottles or breaking into cars or doing different things. And it wouldn't take long to look around and you know, try to paint a picture artificially that disc golf's a bad thing. So they didn't understand disc golf, and people don't understand what it is. So I don't want to ever assume that the people here or the commissioners in town understand disc golf, because then you're taking the premise of what you're arguing for kind of on an assumption that they understand what disc golf is. You kind of treat them like they don't know what it is at all. And I think just by doing that, you know, I don't have anything to hold against anybody. If they don't know what disc golf is and they don't like it, they just haven't been proven that it's something worthwhile. I can't not like them because they don't like something they don't know.
Right. I mean, that attitude is so...
But it's an opportunity to turn the table and make a good impression when they don't know what the impression should be. And it's an opportunity to sink your ship, too. You could just go be a complete, you know, bad person and try to spite them. And that's going to sink your ship, but that's not going to get you where you want to go. So I told all my guys, I'm like, hey, we can only do this through our behavior. We got to take the high road. Even if it's hard, it's still easier. It's just easier being nice to people.
Right.
It's hard to be hard.
Sounds
you know,
so
it's hard to
difficult,
be a jerk to people, you know, especially if they're your neighbors. You should just try to get along because they're your neighbors.
Yeah, so even now you said that most of your neighbors have come around. A couple of them haven't, but they're maybe starting to, because...
There's hope for them yet.
Yeah. But like I said, if you keep being nice to them and you keep saying nice things about them. By the way, I think that also resonates with when you're saying nice things about the neighbors, the people that come here to play are going to be bought into that as well. They're not going to be like, when you're saying nice things, like, it's contagious, your energy.
It is contagious, yeah. If I go out there and have a certain attitude, I can't expect for any of my patrons to come here and act any better. They
think that they're going to be on your side by having your back.
Right.
Good or bad.
Exactly. Yeah, you said it.
So, perfect. I love it. So, yeah, it's fascinating. So now you've got the permits, you've got parking spaces, you want to be able to sell things, and you want to be above board.
Yep, I'm a little slow on getting a pro shop together. Someday I hope to have some discs and some hats and t-shirts and stuff like that. It's going to be hard to have a full pro shop where I offer a huge line of discs, because I probably won't have the traffic to sell that many discs, but more of, like, I don't want to call it a souvenir, that sounds cheap, but things for folks to take that says Caliber and has our logo on it. And this is kind of an abbreviation logo. The logo is more of this. Okay. It's on our scorecard. We can go over that.
All right. So now let's talk about the course itself.
Okay.
So let's start. I mean, God, where do you start? I mean, everything about this course is flawless. So let's start with T signs. T signs are notoriously bad. They're often, the measurements are estimates, or they've measured a fairway, and the assumption is that you're throwing a specific route, and that is not the distance to the hole. But more important is that when you look at a tee pad, and you're new to, first time to a course, and you say, "Where's that hole?" If you can't see it, they say, "Oh, it's on the T sign." It's just an estimate. It doesn't tell you a darn thing. Your T signs are not estimates. They have been plotted to the. They are to scale.
I got a little carried away, but I wouldn't do it any other way next time.
The next remainder of this podcast is going to be about you getting carried away.
And so, I don't know, if you're going to do something, do it right. In ball golf, your little map of the hole, usually you can see the whole hole in front of you. You just need to know a couple distances. You can see what's going on. In disc golf, it's definitely not that way, especially on par fours and par fives. You might have a couple twists and turns in there, blind shots, rollovers. So I wanted to give someone on the box the most information possible without cluttering their mind, of course, but give them a clear representation of what's coming, what is in front of them. how far is it to the landing zone? How far the hole is? How wide is it? So what I did was I kind of drew these signs to scale. And this is where I got a little carried away, because I would measure the distance of the hole, and then I would measure the distance of the sign to the tee to the pin. And then I measured from tree to tree, roughly, groups of trees, and took those distances and translated them to the sign. So when you look at the sign, you're actually seeing the width of the fairway on either side of the middle trees, or just the width of the fairway. You're actually seeing the proportions that you're throwing. And that's all the difference between saying, man, can I make it out there? Or it looks like beyond that, I can make it there.
Yeah.
So I think the more information in the box you get, the better. And that's what led me to do the signs. I thought it was going to be like a 2.5 week project, and 6 weeks later, I'm sitting there still painting.
Okay, so
I got a little carried away.
6 weeks doing T signs, but you could, if you come out here your first time and you step up to a par 5, you can play that hole without walking up to the basket. You literally can look at the first trees in front of you, look at the trees to the right, look at the T sign, put it to scale. In your mind, you'll go, the gap is 2.5 times farther away than that first tree. All right, so those are the T signs. Now,
but the hardest thing about the T signs, okay, so
other than the 6 weeks it took to build them,
so
right?
It was there's most of the holes except for 3 have 2 different tee pads. So there's 3 holes that share a pad. Well, that's fine. Those are easy signs to do.
Wait,
so
I want to clarify.
Go ahead.
When you say 3 holes share a pad, you don't mean 3 different numbered holes use the same tee pad. You mean there's 3 holes where
that
the
only
pros
have
and
one
the AMs have one tee pad.
Yes, correct.
Someone told me that, and that's what I thought it meant. So anyway.
So in order to do a second sign, doing the first sign was great, and then I had to emulate that sign and make it look almost identical to the one I had just done. So I had to literally translate over all the little different things. And someone said, well, how do you know which one to make the AMs, and how do you know which one to make the pros? And it's like, easy. Whichever one looks the smallest means you're further away from that, so that's the pro box. The ones that end up being bigger is the AM.
Of course.
So it just worked out like that.
Amazing. Okay,
it was fun.
So the tee pads, probably the best tee pads I've ever thrown off of. Was pretty universal. Everyone says those are the best pads I've ever thrown off of.
Okay.
By the way, there's going to be a corresponding. I'm going to make a video about the course, which I'm hoping to get out here. I'm hoping I'm able to make it out here tomorrow to just walk through the tee pads and the holes. But you tell.
Well, tee pads. There's a lot that go into tee pads, in my opinion, and we're all used to public parks and put together courses on property that the group that built the course has not owned. There's a lot of limitations we've all had to building tee pads over the years. Part of it is, well, where's it flat? Or I want a certain elevation, but that's not the aspect. So when I say elevation, I'm up and down, and aspect is which way is it pointing. So I think the most important thing in disc golf, because trees and the shape of the fairway is so important, is your elevation of your tee pad and your aspect. So I didn't really hold anything back on building a tee pad. If I knew that it had to be over here 8 feet and it needed to be 4 feet high, I would build it there. If it needed to be dug into the ground, I would build it there because I have an excavator and I was able to do that. So I didn't have to compromise as far as elevation or aspect, which helped me out. So once you've done the work and you've got the nice dirt tee pad, we've all seen the advantages of AstroTurf and all the different sports out there over the years. So I thought, okay, I want to go with the latest, greatest. I want to go with the Discmania turf. So, or, the best turf out. I ended up buying the Discmania stuff because that's what was recommended. That's what was available. So at the time, that was the turf they were using on the. So once I had the turf in my hand, I started trying to figure out, how do you attach the turf and what do you attach it to to make a nice level box that doesn't get dimply and pitted down, something that stays nice and tight, something that's level. What do you put this on concrete? So half of my process is I gotta build something to attach this to. I want to stretch it so that you don't get, floppy, like a rug out there. You don't want any trip hazards, right? So I constructed a pressure treated and marine grade plywood box I built with 2x4s and nice long screws. Everything's screwed and glued on 1 foot centers. So the boxes are 4x8 and the boxes are 5x10 for some of the pros. So after building the actual box, I've got something now I can attach it to, this fabric, right? The grass. And so I would screw it in the back, and I'm thinking, okay, carpet stretcher. I didn't want to go out and buy an $800 wall-to-wall carpet stretcher. So I kind of MacGyvered this guillotine type of stretcher on my trailer, where I was actually able to stretch it about 3/4 of an inch and make it nice and tight, and then screwed it in the front with big fender washers, and then knee kicked it on the side and got it nice and tight. So now I've got this box that's well constructed, and it's nice and tight and it's firm. Next thing to do is to sand it up. And so it was kind of an accident how I stumbled on getting the sand very correct on there. But I was thinking, do I drill a bunch of holes in this PVC, drag it over there and try to get the sand on there even? And I had these wet bags of sand, and I'm like, well, I don't have to worry about this because it's not going to fall in anyway. So I took the sand and I put it out on the box, and would spread it around just to test out. This was before I actually built the boxes. I'm kind of giving a preview of the actual tee box itself. So I would spread it out like peanut butter and make it about 3/4 of an inch thick, and then we let it dry out, and I would use a soft tine rake and rake over it, and it all would fall in the turf nice and evenly, so you didn't have lumpy spots. So I'm like, all right. So I take the sand, I put it in the bucket, 50 pounds per pad. The bigger ones have 75 because the ratio works out to be, I wanted all the boxes to feel the same, have that same depth to them, so that one didn't feel too cushy and the other one had too much sand. And
they're all identical.
They're all identical. So then it's like, okay, what am I going to put these things on? So I've got a nice level surface. So I took road bed fabric, that black stuff, put it down, put some staples in the edge so it doesn't get weird on you. And then I would take 2.5 minus crushed rock and put that down about 3 to 5 inches in some areas, and use a plate compactor. And then you get that nice and flat, as good as you can. And then I would come back in with 3/4 minus crushed rock, and then grade that again by hand, and use a plate compactor and get that nice. And then you just set your box on there, and it should be just about perfect. If not, manipulate it so it is. And then I'd backfill with 2.5 minus plate compact, and then I'd come back in with 3/4 minus and fill it up just a little higher than the turf because I knew it was going to pack down. Plate compact, so there's a nice smooth transition over the back of the box, so you don't have a trip hazard walking up onto the pad. And then once you've got that all plate compacted several times down, get it wet with a hose. I got a 4-wheeler and a big water tank on the back. I can, park uphill, gravity feed, of course, and sprinkle the pad. Give it about 6 or 8 hours to absorb that water. So crushed rock, if you don't get it wet and then compact it, it will tend to separate, and the larger rocks will come to the surface. But if you get it wet quickly and then compact it, all those pieces will bind together and almost become like concrete. So I knew that, so I would go around and compact those about 6 or 8 hours afterwards, once that heavy watering could really get all those rocks wet. And then you press it together and it becomes like concrete. So we've all played on boxes out there, and this is everywhere in disc golf, where you go to a course, and doesn't really matter what course it is. A lot of them behind the box, you got to kind of step up onto the box and then throw. And sometimes, you know, they can only afford 8-foot boxes, which is fine. But sometimes you'll have them covered in like the wood that they poured the cement in. That becomes a slip hazard, especially out on the edge. So I wanted to have a nice rounded front where if your foot does go off it, you're not going to twist an ankle or break a leg and fall off the front of the box. But behind the box, I wanted it to be nice and smooth, have a nice smooth transition, so you didn't have to really think about your footwork. So a lot of public courses, when you're playing those, or you know, any course out there, really, you have to think about your footwork. It almost becomes an advantage to the person who plays that course more, to your local. Whereas I wanted a box that didn't have any bias. It was whoever steps up on that box, it's not going to favor people who've played there before or not. There's no, oh, I got to get the trick to get up there. And it's not like I run into a shot, you know, but we all take our couple of steps and then your X step, and you can suck up 12 feet. No problem, right? 14,
Right.
sometimes 16 feet. Depends on what your rhythm or cadence is. So I wanted to make it so that even if, you know, you wanted to take 3 nice long steps before you even hit the box, you had time to do that. You didn't need to get everything done in 8 feet. So.
Okay, so with everything you just described about making tee pads, that's pretty much what everybody does. So that's
Right.
not that impressive.
Yeah.
Right, that's standard tee pad protocol.
Yeah.
So
Do it once, do it right. Yeah.
well, you even talked about when you were building the pads and that exactly where the people watching or the other people in the group were going to be standing.
Right.
Right, like
Yeah.
it was built up with that in mind, so the other people can be.
Yeah.
What
Part
do you
of
call it?
the homie hangout.
The homie hangout. The homie hangout on
your
the pad.
benches, your area to hang out. So.
Okay, so you got right. You haven't even teed off yet, and you're looking at this to scale tee sign, these perfect pads. Now you're looking at a hole, and I mean you do have natural terrain as far as the elevation. So you have, I mean, most of the holes on this course has elevation changes.
Yes. Yep.
So if you don't like elevation changes, it's a terrible course, right? Because I mean that's what it is.
Yeah.
But I think for most of us, that's more fun than flat. If you
Yeah.
can.
Yep. I took what I had and I did the best with it. Some of the holes, you know, are only 270 or 235 feet long, but they play 350. Some of them are more downhill. But usually there's a little contour in there somewhere. The benches were fun to play with because there was a couple areas where I rerouted some of the course, and it would have worked well either way. A couple of those triangular areas back in there, and it came down to what was going to really work in the end based on what holes had to be. And when I was designing the course, it was like, well, okay, this hole has to be, right? Oh, this hole over here, this has to be. So I kind of came up with my priorities of what holes have to be. Well, this hole has to be, and you come up with your 12 or whatever holes that have to be. Some of the other ones you can manipulate in there and make work. Like those holes are more of a transport hole to the next hole, which adds a lot of opportunity to make a hole that you'd think is just a plain Jane hole, you know, put some features on it and have fun with it.
Now, so did you follow any other course designers' philosophies, or is that your idea? Because that is something that John Haug, who's one of the, you know, if not the best course designer in the world.
Heard him, yeah.
Yeah, great guy. One of his philosophies was he would walk around, he would make sure that all the, you know, the land laid out these beautiful signature holes that had to be.
Yep.
And then we need to connect them. Now, in most places, there's 2 or 3 of those, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Here you have 12 to 14, and you need to fit a couple holes.
Sure. And, you know, it's just such a beautiful piece of land. I think if you put me on 40 acres that was flat with these trees that were all right in a row, I'd be lost like anybody else. The gift was the land. So I just tried to work with it the best I could.
I'll be honest, like if you asked me or any other pro disc golfer out here to tell you which holes were the filler holes, we're not going to be able to tell you. Right. I mean, there are no duds here. There's no, God, that was a great hole except for that one.
Yeah.
So
There's a few traditional disc golf holes, as I call them, just your, basic little par threes.
but that's
Yeah.
they, of course, they should have those.
Sure.
That's part of
Yep.
the variety.
Yep.
Okay, so all these beautiful holes, you had to decide. I know that, the trees that were sick had to go down. So you said some of the course laid itself out because these trees had to go.
Sure.
But once you remove those, clearly you still don't have a finished product. You still
Right.
had to make a
Yep.
number of choices.
Yep.
So what is your philosophy then designing holes? Because this, like if you brought someone out here to this course and you asked them how many courses has this course designer designed, like the answer would be 100 courses. I mean, this is not, I'm not just trying to blow smoke up your ass and because you
Right.
fed us a couple times. This is not a good course. This is like possibly the best design course in the world that I've ever played anyways. What is your philosophy? I mean, how do you design a hole?
When I think of a good hole, whether it's golf, traditional golf, or disc, I think of fair, I think of challenging and fun. Because if it's not fun, it's not fun. If it's not fair, we've all played unfair holes, and they just kind of piss you off. It's like, well, anybody could, I could tell you to throw through that. It's not that fun.
Okay, so
right? Would it be challenging?
I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
What is a fun hole?
A fun hole is something that makes you think that you could score well and possibly will hand you your demise at the same time if you don't make the proper shot. Not that it's that challenging. There's par threes on this course. I only play for par. And I'll just throw a putter down there and take my shot up there and say, I'm happy with a par there. It's still fun, fair, and challenging to me because there's sometimes when I'm going to go for it on that hole. I think of 7. I've only got about a 15% chance of getting down there around the pin for a birdie, but I like that in a hole where you can choose to, okay, I'm just gonna knock it down the middle of the fairway and get up there and get out with my boring par. But there's plenty of folks who've walked home with trophies in ball golf because they just kind of strolled through their last round and said a boring par is a good score. Par should be a good score. So,
so you're saying that fun requires
fun,
an element of risk.
Yes.
So in other words, you feel good when you succeed.
Yes.
And if there's not a risk, succeeding doesn't feel as good.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
that to make something fun is to say, oh, this isn't a guaranteed birdie. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to
none of
make
those
the
out
right
there.
shot, and if you make the right shot and you get it around the pin or you get it in the proper part of the fairway, you feel a reward. You're like, okay, I'm setting myself up for the next shot. That makes it fun, not necessarily par 4s and par 5s are more fun. I kind of look at a par 4 and a par 5 as 2 or 3 different par 3s. You've got different challenges ahead. I was lucky to have a good golf pro as a kid that I learned from Texas called The Machine from the 1960s. And he was always giving up these metaphors of life when he'd teach me about golf.
Right.
And
that's golf.
right? And that's golf. And one of the things was, a par 3 is kind of like, age 1 to 25. You can go for it. You can get in trouble. Most likely you'll make a par. You might make a birdie, but it's pretty short. There's not a whole lot of planning after that. Try to get it up around the pin and make a birdie. A par 4 might be your 250-year-old age, whereas you're not going for possibly the best possible shot. Your first shot, you want to set it up to get into the pin on your second shot and get that birdie off your second shot. So your philosophy might not be, I have to have the best drive on this par 4. It's more of, I want to give myself an opportunity to then give myself the best opportunity. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And a par 5 being the same thing. That would be 8 to age 75, where you make a good shot to get in good position to get to the next best position, maybe not the most optimal, but a safe one, to then get home and get your birdie. So it's kind of like a series of par threes. But it's kind of like you're playing life. Do you go for it all at once, or do you methodically plod through a par four and get your birdie or your par, because par's a good score. Par five is the long haul in life. It's I'm gonna play this safe. I'm gonna get out there, and you might not win any awards, but hey, you got a par or possibly birdie. Jared Person on hole 6 throws a, I hope I say it right, I think he throws a M3 off the pro pad, because he's not necessarily looking for distance. He's looking for control and to be in a certain spot of the fairway so he can get to the next certain spot of it. It's very position play, but he's always around the basket for birdie. So you don't necessarily need that driver. You could just throw if you can throw like him mids, but sometimes just a fairway to get there.
So, but one thing I like about this is, as we talked about, is we agree that a good hole is a hole that requires a decision.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't require a decision to be a good hole, but one of the elements that can make a good or a great hole requires a decision.
Sure.
And a lot of times on par, like just say par fours, people try to make it a par four by just making it long, no decision.
Right.
But I think another flaw is some people that are trying to not be that type of course designer, they say, well, I'm going to make 2 placement shots, so we're not just using length. But often those are 180 feet, left turn, 200 feet.
Right.
That's also not that much fun, because that's throwing a couple 200 approach shots.
A dog leg, which is fun once in a while, but 18 of them would be...
There's room for everything.
Yeah, sure.
But what's really fun is when you can choose between, I can play my 250-foot shot, or I can try to rip a 450-foot throw if you're a pro, and there's a reward for it.
Yep.
All of these holes out here, every last one of these holes, there's an opportunity to rip.
Yeah.
There's not one of them that forces you to throw a mid.
Right.
So you have to choose, and there's a risk. I mean, it's in hindsight.
Yeah.
If you rip it, you may regret doing it. But if you throw short, you're also maybe you might be taking your par, which isn't bad. So was that intentional?
Yes. I like.
That was a rhetorical question. You already told me, but
I like options and risk reward. Pete Dye was a golf course designer, who just died several years ago, I think. And he had a lot of split fairways and elevated different height fairways that paralleled each other. And one of his philosophies was make them think in the box. Give them options to play not only to their strong suits, but possibly maybe not play for the strong suit, maybe play for the big gusto and, get something out of it. It might only be a 25% chance you get that big shot, but at least give them the option to think about it. I think it makes it fun, because you can think, hey, I can catch this guy, rather than have a hole that's a foregone conclusion that everybody's going to birdie. Even myself out here, I've played this course a couple hundred times now, and I still find different ways to the pin. I try different ways, because even though I've birdied every hole in the course from the advanced amateurs, I can't seem to string together more than a 5 down as my best score, but I can birdie every hole in the course. I just want to string them all together at once, but that's where the risk reward is, because sometimes when I'm ahead, I get bit, and or sometimes when you're behind, you've got an option to get, go forward. Also, wind and elevation in this area, the split fairways, give you an option, because if it's blowing tailwind or in your face, you've got an option to go forehand or backhand or play a different shot. So it could add up to different strategy options, which is I think is necessary in all golf. You see that a lot on links courses over in Scotland. You see there's a lot of different ways to play those holes. And it's based on the wind and the weather and what you got inside that day.
Okay.
And golf to me is a lot about, it's a game about life. Not every day is going to be your best day out there.
Right.
Those are the days you might learn the most. That I shot 5 down the other day. I had a 7 down and I gave it up. I didn't really learn too much that day. I had a great day. Those days when I shoot 5 or 10 over, I got a lot to learn. Sometimes it's my body's just not working that day. Sometimes it's my head. But when you realize that when you're playing golf, you can just kind of go into not necessarily practice mode, but hey, maybe today's a good day to work on my mental side of the game. Maybe today, maybe it's because I can't stand this guy in my group and I'm letting that get to me. Maybe if I had better relations with that guy in this group, maybe I would have had a better day. Maybe I got a little pent up because of myself or whatever, but there's always challenges in golf besides you just throwing the disc that day. It might be, every day's not going to be your best day out there, even if you're a good player. You're going to have days that are down, and you just need to work with that and have it be, let it work for you instead of trying to buck that tide, But it is, sometimes it's playing with people. Everybody's got people out there they play with that can sometimes bother them. They might have things they do on the course, like talk all the time, or just you're always looking for their disc or something, and that's the challenge of golf. Is you gotta bear down, you gotta stay mentally focused, and deal with the challenges out there.
Beautiful. So you have the 2 sets of tees. The short tees I think you call them advanced dams. Advanced dams. And you said those are your tee pads because you're an advanced dam player, basically.
Sure.
So these are set up so from you on these tee pads, if you execute the hole, most of the holes you can birdie.
If I have a decent day, a pretty decent day, I'm right around par.
Okay. So which is about advanced dam.
Sure.
And 5 under was your best. Now, how often do you play the pro tees?
I play the pro tees about 3 to 4 times a year.
Okay. What's your best score on the pro tees?
My best score on the pro tees is 2 over. And I've been a couple
good.
Down several times coming into that last stretch of 5 or 6 holes, but just didn't have it together mentally. I was like, I could shoot even par from the pros.
Well, what is the par? What is the par?
It's par 65.
Par 65. And the pro tees have the same par. You call them the same
Yes.
par, they're just more challenging.
Yep, it's just the pro tee. Yep. Just like a golf course where you would have your different distances from your different, it's still a par 3 or par 5. You just, if you're playing the pro boxes, then you're obviously better or want more punishment. And,
want more punishment.
It's just going to be more challenging. But, obviously an even par from the pros and an even par from the advanced dams, both turned in. It's definitely a harder course from the pros.
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's a hard course every one of these holes, like I said, if you play aggressive, I was just imagining if you had a very aggressive player who throws far, a top player like Simon Lizotte. If you cloned him and had a foursome of 4 Simon Lizottes who shot together, I'd be willing to bet that you'd have an 8-stroke swing between the best on that card and the worst on that card.
Yeah, could have. Yeah.
Now, if all 4 Simon Lizottes played conservative, you'd have a 2 or 3 stroke swing. They would shoot very similar. But if you play aggressive, like it's
because there is risk reward. Yes. Someone who likes that type of game.
This is a course where if you had a major tournament here,
like it.
So someone's shooting 1100 round here.
Sure.
Because it is the type of course where you could come out here against the best players in the world. Not us, but if your name is Ricky or Eagle or Simon or one of those non-mortals, but if they have a good day, they're going to shoot 4 strokes ahead of the second best score in their field.
Yep.
On the long course, like it's going to happen, which is great.
Yep.
So now you've got that's your philosophy on the holes. That's fun. We talked about fun.
Yep.
What is fair?
Fair to me is, when you tee off on a hole, you've got a challenge out there on a par. I'm mainly thinking par 4s and par 5s. Now, we've all played par 3s that aren't fair. That's the one where, it hooks to the left or it hooks to the right, and your shot's going right at a pin, and there's a big, huge tree 8 feet in front of the pin. So the pin, some people might say, well, the pin's being guarded. It's like, but it was an ace shot, right? It was a perfect shot. So I don't like to have trees directly in front of the pin, because if someone sees a shot and throws a shot at the pin with the intention of it going right at the pin, that's a good shot. That should be rewarded. If you don't make a good shot, then, you know, and you go off the fairway, then you're kind of on your own. But you shouldn't have something hokey in the middle of the fairway. You should have designated fairways. So as far as fairway design, to me, I kind of have this ratio of a certain distance gap and a certain distance away from you, so that it makes you think, wow, that's open enough where I could throw it as hard as I want. Might not be the best choice, might be the best choice, but at least it baits you into thinking, I can crush it here, which everybody wants to do, right?
Which is that's
Yeah.
the fun part. Which
Yeah,
is
or it might
the
make you
decisions.
think, you know, the times I've crushed it, I don't wind up as good as the times I play a little more conservatively and just get it out there 275 to 325. I don't need full 375, which is my peak. I like to have a challenge out in the fairway, but if you go through that challenge, let's say your challenge is at 175 feet and you got a nice gap, and the fairway turns, let's say, to the left. And you make the challenge and you get through that, and it's like, yeah, you hit it. And you go around the corner and there's 4 trees right in your face. I mean, what fun's that? Like a poke and hope. You know, we throw it and there's just a billion trees there, and if you just kind of throw it and go, oh, I hope it made it. So I think that out here there's enough room and the fairways are wide enough where it's a very playable course. If you keep it in play on these fairways, you can score.
But the fairways are not too wide either.
They're not too wide, but I think the ratio is just right where you can unleash on a disc,
100%.
but still have that fun factor that you made it. It's not wide open where I can just throw it anywhere, but there's that right ratio where you feel like you should be able to throw it full power and still keep it in play.
The ratio is
Without
exactly-
having clowns in the fairway up there to jump out and boogeyman you and go, ha ha, you'll never do well here because we don't want you to score well here. I don't care if someone comes out here and shoots an 18 down. I don't care. Good on you. They made the right decisions and they threw the right shots. They should be rewarded. So it's not a part on me to make it hard. I just want it to be fair. So if they make the right shots, they don't get a boogeyman that jumps out and steals their disc right in front of, you know, they made a perfect shot down that fairway and there's a wall of trees right there.
No, it is.
We've all played this course.
It is the perfect amount. I mean, we're in the woods, but like I would be hesitant to call this a woods course.
Combo.
It's combo.
It's a big woods course.
Yeah, I mean, a woods course is 4 of the 5 courses down at Fairgood.
Right.
Those are woods courses.
Yep.
Those are tight gaps. If you miss them, there's
Bit
elements of
overgrown.
randomness. They're good courses because the randomness are late in the hole instead of early, which means,
Sure.
you know, you get penalized by parring a good throw, not
Yep.
bogeying. But there's some randomness there.
Sure.
There's none of that here. At the same time, the gaps are not so big that the trees are not in play.
Right.
We talked about this earlier, that when a good player steps up to a hole, a professional player, you could go out to a course where the course is littered with trees, and they could step up to a hole where there's no trees on hole 1, there's no trees on hole 2, there's trees for other players, but the gaps are big enough that the trees aren't in play. They're basically non-existent to someone that has real good disc control. That's not the case here.
Right.
Like every single hole in this course has a missable. There's not one single fairway that is not missable.
Sure.
So yeah.
You
So
can get in some
again,
trouble.
I can just keep saying nice things. So okay. So fun, fair, and
Challenging.
challenging. And challenging.
Gotta be tough. It's got to be challenging. It can't be just a bunt. You know, if a guy like me comes out here and shoots 10 down, there's something wrong with it. You know, so it's got to have. You know, I think challenging falls in the opportunity that it wasn't so easy that you birdied everything, and it wasn't so hard that all you could ever make was par. I think on Disc Golf Course Review, Steve West has a couple thousand-page thread on par talk, and there's a lot of great discussion in there about the sanctity of par, which would be, well, that things should be hard enough where par reflects what the difficulty of that hole is. So one of his measures is how far above par is the average. You know, if 20 people go play and it's a par 3 and everybody's averaging 3.75, is it really a 3 or is that a tweener, right? We don't like tweener holes. So tweener holes, I like to get my par correct, so that your deviation from par is around a half a stroke on average for a group of people, not all of the same capability. Okay. So if something's playing at a 3 point or a 2.15 and it's a par 3, it's obviously too easy.
Sure.
And there's a lot of par 4s on tour and par 5s on tour that, you know, guys are eagling and birdieing. Like it's the rarity to get a par. But a par is actually a good score. You know, a lot of pros on this course from the advanced dams, they might think, well, these are soft par 4s or par 5s, which some of them are from the advanced dams. But from the pros, I think they're plenty challenging. It doesn't mean that, you know, when the big boys come, or if some of the big boys come, that they're not going to shoot a 14 down. They just might. That's the nature of disc golf. It's a little more volatile.
They're not going to shoot that from the long tees.
It might. I don't know.
No.
You never know.
No, I know. I promise they won't. No, you're right. So from the advanced am tees, there are some par 4s and par 5s. I would be upset if I didn't birdie.
Sure.
I'm expecting to birdie them.
Yep.
But I'm not playing for those aren't the pro tees. So
right.
by definition, I'm not on the correct tee pad when I'm feeling this way. No, the long tees, I disagree. No. If you shoot 15 under here,
yeah, I think you've had a hot round.
If you the idea that you would shoot 15 under here would almost discredit the course, because that's right. I mean, so yeah, Paul gets hot. He's, you know, double digits from the long tee pads would be right. Stellar.
Yeah,
I don't know what that would be. It's 1050, 1060, 1070.
Yeah.
So if it's going to happen, it's going to be a fluke by someone named Eagle is going to come out and shoot a 1090 round. But that's not
right.
It's not a 1400 course.
It'd be awesome to see.
Yeah. Be more awesome to do.
Yeah, that'd be great. I got an 18 down in me someday.
Okay, so it's fun, it's fair, it's challenging. Even the little details, such as when you're on the par 4s and 5s, there's signs on the trees that tell you how far the basket is from this point. Obviously that's reflected.
Wind socks are coming to let you know
of
the breeze out there. You know, when you
shocking.
when you throw a disc, you know, you let go of it, it's going at its max speed, and then it's going to continually slow down as it's going to lose RPM. So knowing what the wind is doing out in the landing zone and 2/3 of the way to your landing zone might be of more concern to what it's doing right where you're at. So I think having just little blue flags, something that's nice and light where you could really tell which way that wind is drifting, especially when you have these rollovers where air curls a little bit. You know, you might feel a little tailwind here, but it might be because the wind's going this way. It wraps around that other hill and comes up, but it's actually a headwind out here. So to know that on the tee box is something that is good to know. It's more things that you can work with. More information you have in the box, if you can process it, I think it helps your game. If you're able to say, okay, I can take that into account. I'm going to adjust. I'm going to go a little bit this way or a little bit this way. So just one more thing you can use for yourself.
For sure. Okay. Man-made OBs. I am in the minority. I'm a fan of man-made OBs. I like them. I think they make courses better, but with the spirit that most people don't like them, I've seen you have a couple of them out here. Well, there's so let me back up. Property lines, that's a pretty easy one. Property lines must be out of bounds. So there's no gray area there. So I don't even call that a man-made OB. That's just the course.
Right.
You have one man-made OB on a hole that is a lake, but it is marshy and the water level has changed. It's pond. So therefore, having a man-made OB defines the boundary of the water, which is
Sure.
that's just smart. I think
Yep.
most people would agree with that. And you have one other man-made OB that separates the new course from the existing course
Yes.
because you have two separate courses. Like, so having a boundary there, I think most people would agree with
Yep.
that too. So aside from that, you haven't put man-made OBs up. You don't need them, obviously, but what's your philosophy on why you haven't?
There
Gotten
are
on the
going to be
bandwagon.
6 areas on the course where there are OBs.
Okay.
Some of them are obvious, like you stated, the property line. Other ones around 14 pin because of its proximity with the garage in that area. There's going to be a couple other places at the end of 18. Not too much like, oh, you have to stay within these lines, but natural boundary lines where you might expect that.
So these aren't contrived out of bounds. This
Yeah.
is actual.
They're kind of natural spots where
That
you
you're just
shouldn't want to
defining the
go.
line.
Yeah, I'm just defining the
Yeah, that's
line. and
different.
They're fairly lenient, but I'm a ball golfer, and OB to me means if you go OB, you're going to take a stroke in distance, and that's ball golf. But us disc golfers like myself, we're not going to put up with that. So if you're not around the pin, if you're in the fairway and you go out of bounds, it's your standard meter in or however it's played. But once you get up
Changes.
around the pin, I am more into a drop zone because I think that if you throw a disc out of bounds and you take 3 steps in from out of bounds, 1 meter, and you've got a 25-foot putt and you can your par, there's not much of a penalty there. It's got to be a little more. So having drop zones, I think, is to split the difference between stroke and distance, which is true out of bounds in golf, and what is mostly currently being played in disc golf.
Okay.
So it adds a little meat on the bone of whether you should have taken that risk or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So
Okay. So the courses are perfect. They're beautiful. They're manicured. You've made a deal with the mosquitoes. There's no Northwoods mosquitoes.
not now.
Not now.
Yeah, we
Okay.
get about 6 or 8 weeks of them, but that's like any place else.
Okay.
That's healthy.
So it's a perfect course to come out and play when you're in North Idaho. But right now, it's some guy's house and just a course in his yard. You come make a donation, you play disc golf, and you go home. So what is the future of this property?
The future of this property is this is a pay-to-play disc golf course. It costs $10 to play for now. You can buy a 10-punch pass for $50. That's for an individual person. We do sell a family pass. If you're a couple, then I'll sell you a pass for $50 for that couple. Or if you come out with your family, you kind of give them a break. So yeah, I'd like to have tournaments. I did a weekly league last year. I'll start that up again this next year. It'll be on Sundays around 10:30 in the morning. So yeah, this is a pay-to-play course. I think you get more out of a pay-to-play course because nobody in their right mind is going to put this much effort into a public course, because the future of many public courses, as we've all seen, they end up, well, they're not public. They're usually on a piece of land that isn't being used right now, and then it gets taken from you. So the amount of effort I've been able to put forward and say I'm not going to stop is based on me looking down the road saying, well, this isn't going to be taken from me, and I'll be able to run this for a long time, keep this in the family. And
Well, you actually told me that when you were going to the city council meetings, when you were going through that process,
yes,
that one of the concerns is that this is a business and these are supposed to be homes, and you made the case of obvious to us that when it is pay to play, that is what keeps the riffraff out. And people are going to be more respectful. They're going to respect the property more.
Sure.
You're not going to have loiterers who just want to hang out and drink beer all day. You're like, if you have to pay,
Yep.
it does weed out people that the neighbors might not have wanted.
It most likely does. Our location is going to help on that respect, because people have to drive 15 minutes out of Sandpoint, or an hour and 20 minutes out of Spokane. A lot of folks from Spokane and Coeur d'Alene come to the course. Got to thank them all.
Of course.
And from other areas, it's amazing to see people drive in. But I think when you do add just a little bit of money in there, it filters out people who might want to come out and be a problem. And some people think disc golf is free because that's all they've been exposed to. It's like, oh, disc golf isn't it supposed to be free? And most likely, if you have been experiencing it for free, thank your park system, thank your volunteers. It wasn't free. It's just that somebody else paid for it and did the hard work. So when you run across private courses, don't be surprised to have to pay anywhere from $10 to $20 because it takes a lot to get it going. I've probably got, just in this course alone, this isn't even including the hours. I've probably got close to 400,000 into this course. And then you can add in 800 excavator hours, 400 to 500 tractor hours, 300 sawing hours with a chainsaw in your hand. Then you've got your maintenance days, and it's like any other business. You get to change your hats a lot, and got to go down to the county house and do this and that and the other.
So can I correct you on something?
Yes.
So you're referring to this as a business?
Yes.
You do realize you're going to lose money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I know this.
All right. So
Yeah.
I said it's the best course in the world. It's an absolute failure as a business.
Well, yeah, because
So
to recoup my money, I did this because this is my backyard and this is how I want it to be. And yeah, we make enough each year to pay for our insurance and to pay the taxes and to pay for my diesel and maybe buy a chainsaw or two.
Okay.
So as far as making money off it, I don't think we're there yet in disc golf.
So what about? So you had talked about plans though, campsites.
Yes.
But so what is the potential future of ways? Again, you're not like.
Well,
I wouldn't even say to make money.
Yeah.
In order to lose less money than you're losing currently.
Right.
What are some ideas you have?
I think adding a second course is going to be key. I'm about halfway done building that course. It'll be called Motherlode. It's going to be a par 71. That's going to be an extra attraction because people say, well, I'm going to come to this area and I'm going to spend money there because there's not only one, but there's two. I would also like to, in the future, do a limited amount of campsites that are far away from the subdivision to the south. But nice little places where you can feel at home and play plenty of disc golf, kind of make it more of a destination. And when I've told people what I want to do out here, people, when I was doing the first course, people were like, "Ah, man, that's a pipe dream." People, that's a pipe dream, blah blah blah. And then I started building the second course, and people were like, "Man, God, you think you're gonna be able to do it?" And I'm like, "I don't know. This might be a pipe dream too." And so, and then I was thinking the other day,
It's not.
My wife, we've been sitting around. We're like, okay, once we have two courses, how do we organize it? How do we organize it under a name? Because you got to kind of give it like a resort name or something, right? And I'm thinking, why not Pipe Dream? Because Pipe Dream incorporates the anticipation of a different type of consciousness. It's a dream. Because when you're out here working, you're dreaming of getting it done. You're kind of not there. And holes that you got to shoot down long tunnels, and people call pipe shots. We also have a Trans-Canada pipeline that runs through, so that's a big pipe that goes through here. Yeah, it's kind of pipe dream to pull something like this off, and it might be a good resort name. I don't know.
So, have you had players come in from Europe yet? I mean, has this become a destination yet? Okay.
No, we're just getting enough reviews on Disc Golf Course Review to be rated on their pay-to-play or private courses and pay-to-play course section. We've got enough to be ranked in the state, and we're #1 in the state of Idaho. I need about 8 more reviews on Disc Golf Course Review to be rated nationally. And if I came in at an average of what I've been getting, will be in the 8 or 9 area on the big scale of things.
Yeah,
which has different courses.
Yeah, the
National
feature.
rating.
Yeah, the feature that I'm going to start doing is I haven't come up with a name for it, but it's going to be something along the lines of the world's best course ... maybe. because there are other, I mean, Blue Ribbon
Absolutely.
Pines and Maple Hill, and
Absolutely.
obviously John Houck's compound down in Texas, and
Right.
like there's going to be something tomorrow that's going to be awesome. So,
Sure.
but I can say with absolute certainty there won't be a better course than this. There would be other courses that you would say are
Sure.
as good as this one,
Yeah.
but you're not getting trumped. I mean, there's
Yeah.
simply, it's impossible when you have 18 signature holes.
And
I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, there's 18 holes here that would be signature holes at many courses in the country. Your worst hole is a great hole. Now, you know this.
take it. Thanks.
But you know this. Like, there's no cop-out holes on this course.
It's come around, you know,
There's none.
even if you see a hole that might not have a lot to it, you can change some subtle things to make it a fun, challenging, fair hole.
But those
And
holes,
I think if you get them all with that recipe, is that fun, fair, and challenging. A lot of people overlook the fair thing, or the challenging thing, or the fun thing. You know, you can make a hole hard as hell and fair. It's just too hard. You know, it's too challenging. It's like, well, I'd never make birdie, right? So you got to have this idea of making a birdie, and if you think you can make a birdie, that's fun. Holes that I step up to, that I play, and I'm like, man, I can throw it 375, but I'll never get a birdie on this hole. It's not that fun for me personally. You know, I don't have a big arm. I'm probably in the noodle arm category, but you know, just got to keep it fun.
Gotcha. So, final thing, you told me that with the challenges you've had, but you know, winning over some of the neighbors, that you would love to have them play.
Sure. Absolutely.
Do you want to
Some of
extend,
their kids.
if they watch, you want to extend
Absolutely.
an open invitation to the people of the community to come out and play?
Absolutely. I've tried to throw it out a couple times. Some of them don't take it seriously. Some of them think, I don't need to start playing disc golf. There are some kids in the areas and in our immediate area bordering my property. I'd love for you to bring them by. I'll help teach them the game of golf and the game of disc golf. And yeah, it'd be great to have them around. You never know where your next superstar is going to come from, and what a treat it would be to be able to walk through the woods and go play a course.
I love it.
Yeah.
So the final thing I'm going to throw out there that I think hopefully will happen is that with all the challenges that you've gone through to put this course in the ground within the community, I hope this will be a badge of honor for this neighborhood and this community someday, where people can say, you know, the top rated, because there's 12,000 courses in the world right now.
Sure.
There'll be 20,000 courses in 5 years.
Right.
There'll be between 15 and 18 million players in 5 years.
Right. It is growing.
There's 12,000.
Astronomically.
There's 12,000 courses, 10 million players, and it's
Right.
grown every year for 43 years.
Yeah.
I will predict that at some point in the future, every single one of these neighbors will be bragging about, do you realize that we have Pebble Beach in our backyard?
Yeah.
Like that's going to happen, and it's going to happen because the course is Pebble Beach,
Right.
but because of your attitude and the spirit and the energy you put out, and the community of players around you that have bought into your energy,
Mm-hmm.
that's why this is going to become just a landmark here. It's going to be something that people are proud to have in their neighborhood.
Yeah. It'd be
So
great to
it's-
have my neighbors proud of this, not only this area, but this course. And they should feel
They will.
not privileged, but lucky to live next to a piece of land that's been cared for in an ecological way. Trying to balance things out, you know.
And there's no
try not
suburbs
to-
here. There's nothing like
Yeah.
there's no condos.
Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing.
This land will stay perfect because
Yeah.
this is what it's for.
Yeah, so, you know, you get into building a disc golf course, and I'll say it again, you become a forest manager, and it's a lot of responsibility. You look around at all the vegetation, at the different grasses you grow and everything, and you're out there trying to survey it. Not all the time, but you take notice of it, and you're always going to try to tweak and adjust it and make it better. And it's your park, and you need to take care of it. And now that I've messed with it, I'm responsible for it. So that is actually a bigger, you know, beyond the design aspect, I'm responsible for the ecological disaster that I create here. I tried to clean one up, as I am on this other piece of property.
Yeah, I can see it.
But I think I've got it handled, and I've got the right know-how And if I don't have it, my wife has it, and I know a couple foresters who've really helped me out.
Gotcha.
So that helps.
So where do people, I mean, they can obviously look up Caliber on the Disc Golf Course Review,
Sure.
but where would they contact you if they want to come to town and play, or what's...
So folks who want to play Caliber disc golf, you can reach me at area code 208-920-0541. We're at the end of Shepherd's Lane. We are located at 110 Caliber Drive, which is at the very end of Shepherd's Lane. You take a hard right, you'll see the sign. Can't miss it. We named the road coming in because we own both pieces of property. We did have some folks who came down to the end of the road and wound up at a couple different houses, so we wanted to alleviate that, so we changed the address of the road. I do have a Facebook page. It's not too up to date, but I can be reached through that, or you could just email me at pjstiller@frontier.com.
All right. Thank you so much,
Scott,
for having me. It's been an absolute privilege.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming out and spending some time here and checking out Caliber.
It's a piece of heaven.
And yeah, you're always welcome out. Thank you so much.
I will be back. All right, thanks, guys.
Awesome.
That's episode 2 of, let's say 2 of 35,000, because I'm going to live a long time and I'm going to keep doing this, talking to interesting and cool people. So thanks, you guys. See you next. Hey everyone, I'm now on Patreon. Click the link below. Not only keep the free content coming with tutorials, tips, podcasts, etc., but get a bunch of free stuff like live stream Q&As, copy of my book, voting on topics, behind the scenes, bunch of cool stuff. Click the link down below to join.